Here's a really interesting Australian example of the corrupt guru. Again, you see this sort of energy everywhere. The Royal Academy of Surgeons in Australia, it's recently come out in the Age newspaper over the last 2 years of a lot of allegations of women. Now, towards the male surgeons. Now, you're in a college where basically all of the teachers are men. And they are these men are really, really needed by the system for the prestige and expertise of the school. They're totally essential to the entire structure of the education system. Now, once these men realise this, then it's like, oh, what can I get away with? So these men would start doing things like basically blackmailing female trainees with sexual favours in order to pass exams, systematically. And then when anyone would get in trouble for it, then the other men within the system would cover it all up. So a lot of this corrupt guru archetype is working in comradeship with each other to basically protect each other as they feed off women in this way. And so this is systematic blackmail and entrapment of women who want to become surgeons. So you have to go through this process of basically having to sleep your way through the education process. It's very serious stuff, and that's been happening all through Australia, apparently. And there's a lot of allegations like this, and there's not enough time tonight to go into it in the military and in the Navy as well. And there's a big inquest at the moment into a lot of the stuff that's happened in the Australian Air Force and in the Navy, and it's really serious stuff. That's right. So here's an example which is a bit more youthful. 70 Australian schools have been involved in a pornography sharing website that is also pretty much run by children. Okay? And this kind of gets into this whole idea of the conversation we are not having with our boys, our children in Australia. Okay? So, this is basically where boys are able to separate themselves from women enough to go into this whole perceived commodity idea where they're basically collecting photos of naked young girls and sharing them on the internet through a systematic peer pressure situation with 70 different schools, and using these pictures as a commodity that they were trading like Pokemon cards. Okay, so then there was schools like in Melbourne where they hauled all. So the school's gone, this is a problem. So they get all the girls in this girls' school into the assembly and say, okay, you need to cover up, right? You need to wear no makeup, no short skirts, don't take any sexy selfies of yourself. So they're looking at the problem here and going, okay, the problem is the girls, right? And there's this whole idea of the conversation we are not having with the boys in our culture is basically about how to respect girls. Because, again, these boys are growing up in a culture that is completely demonising women in this way, right? And it's really, really far out. Another example of this sort of thing is in Egypt. And I'm getting really global here, guys. This is a global issue. 99% of women in Egypt have suffered from sexual harassment. 96.5% have suffered from sexual assault. Right? So this whole idea that I've heard that in Egypt, if there's a family walking down the road with so they've got some young boys, and they say something abusive to some young girls walking down the street, no one will reprimand those boys. It's completely accepted in that culture. I don't want to generalise too much here. I haven't been to Egypt, but it's completely accepted in a lot of places like that where you can just treat women as second-class citizens and they're not reprimanded. Again, 99% of women sexually harassed, 96.5% sexually assaulted. Again, we get back to that statistic in Australia of potentially more like 3/4 of women in Australia have been potentially sexually assaulted. Why is most of this not reported? Because we have a system that doesn't really support women when they report this sort of thing. Okay? We have a system which demonises women as the perpetrators or very complicit in these events, and looks at men as the victim as well. So most women don't feel safe in reporting these sorts of things. That's why the actual statistics are completely unknown. But that I've heard from talking to other therapists who think something like 75%. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the Vagina-Brain connection and this whole idea that someone called the goddess complex. So a friend of mine was on a retreat in this area, and there was a guy there, and they were having breakfast, and he said at some point, oh, I like this area, this guy from Sydney, but there's too many women up here with the goddess complex. And my friend was like, excuse me? He's like, the goddess complex. And I don't know what happened next, but I think she became very upset and I think he had to retreat. So this is why I call this the delusion of the goddess complex. This guy is really barking up the wrong tree coming into this area and saying that, in the sense that, so if we think about this idea of a goddess, so this is an empowered, infinitely empowered feminine being who's completely in tune with her body, the non-local awareness of her womb and her creativity and her core sense of self, and has a very confident and feisty sexuality, and is on this planet to really kind of be creative and to help uplift people and challenge men to stop being complacent slobs and this sort of thing, so really activated women, this whole kind of goddess idea. And he's gone, goddess complex, so it makes me uncomfortable. So what would make him comfortable? So he's saying there's too many goddesses around this area. What would make him uncomfortable? The opposite? So would he feel relaxed when he was around a manageable quantity of docile women? What does he want? Right? What's this guy after? Does he want to go back to wherever he came from to experience that? So if he wants that, if he wants a manageable quantity of docile women with low sense of self, low self-esteem, and low sense of hopefulness, so he can feel comfortable in his own laziness and the fact that he's not doing anything, how does he get there? Right? Well, the process in actually getting there and damaging women in this way is very available by looking at the corrupt guru stuff. It's also socially approved in this culture. And it's very, very simple to do. And most men are doing, I don't want to generalize, guys, I don't want to, but a lot of people are subscribing to these points of view because of our culture and the way we've been brought up. So, now, these solutions to suppress women are very interesting. I'm going to read a quote here from an incredible book by Naomi Wolf called Vagina, a New Biography. Listen very carefully. If you are to subdue and suppress women in such a way that you do not need to pen them in or lock them up, in such a way that they come to do it themselves, to suppress themselves, to lose joy and self-direction, to have no pleasure, to distrust the strength of love, to think human connection frail, then you must target the vagina. Very simple. Now, why did she say that? What is going on here? So, that guy, that whole goddess complex guy, all he needs to do is target any kind of violent energy at the vagina in any particular way, and it's going to create this world that he's looking for where women will be closed down. And the techniques and how to do this are basically psychically shared through harmonic resonance or through this Akashic field idea that we've talked about, through subscribers. So if you tune into this idea, if you want to be a corrupt guru, all these kinds of ideas and thoughts and energies are going to come to you on how to do this to women. And this is really what's going on. And I'm talking about ideas and practices that are shared through time, and this is essentially very evil. And I'm talking about, this is essentially black magic. So, what is the Vagina-Brain connection? What are we talking about here? So, our education system doesn't really get into this, but basically, if you can think about it like this: a woman's core sense of self, creativity, feistiness, ability to create new life, her ability to transcend energy from the whole spiritual realm into the physical realm, is through the womb and through the vagina. Okay, so it's really important to understand that there's also non-local faculties of awareness, and that the womb and vagina are intimately linked to the autonomic nervous system in the brain. The autonomic nervous system is the subconscious nervous system. This is fight or flight, or rest and digest and make love. And we talked about this in the first workshop. Now, so the pudendal nerve terminates in the clitoris, and this is basically, if you look at it, one organ between the brain and the clitoris is one entity, one physical thing. So if this area is traumatized, you traumatize the brain. So a healthy female body and healthy female sexuality is completely a very, very important component of creativity and feeling good and having the right cortisol, dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin levels in the brain. It's all regulated through the vagina and through healthy sexual interaction. So the unfortunate reality with the physiology here is that the female brain is essentially extremely sensitive to violence, because essentially if you look at this book by Naomi Wolf, a part of the female brain terminates in the clitoris, which is very vulnerable. Okay, so all you need to do is target any kind of violence at this area, and essentially any kind of violence in this area. The most extreme case here is female circumcision, and female circumcision, where the clitoris is cut off, is essentially like a psycho-spiritual lobotomy to the female body. This is really serious stuff, okay? And this is 200 million women on the planet. 200 million have already been circumcised. And the reason is to take all these faculties away, to take away that core sense of self, to take away hopefulness, to take away creativity, to take away willfulness, to take away feistiness, and create docile women who can be controlled, who just are completely, it's like a part of them's missing. It's really sad stuff, and it's really hard to talk about, because we're talking about, with this sort of trauma, it's we all feel it, because we're all one, and it's a big issue on the planet and a big issue in our culture. So the reason I'm talking about this is because we can bring more energy and consciousness to this, and the more we can heal these sorts of things and help other people heal these sorts of things, because all these sorts of traumas are healable